During a time where most manufacturers try to make their gaming laptops as thin as possible and also try to emphasize the portability factor, Alienware goes exactly in the opposite direction. And with the Area-51 in its 16-inch flavor, we got one of the biggest and heaviest notebooks in this sort of mainstream form factor in our hands today. And as someone who appreciates choice, I can only commend them for actually trying something different here, and for everyone who is fed up with gaming laptops that may be easy to carry around but come with some serious performance compromises, the Area-51 might very well be the perfect laptop, especially since the good folks from Dell's gaming division pretty much perfected the chunky desktop replacement recipe here. So they actually properly utilized the massive chassis and cram in a ton of ports, all the latest and greatest from Intel and Nvidia, running at some pretty insane power levels, and at the same time, the Area-51 can access almost all of its performance potential while staying reasonably quiet at the same time. In addition, we get some new looks, which I really like, upgraded displays, and one of the most satisfying laptop keyboards on the market. So let's see if there's still a place for over-the-top, totally ridiculous, but in all the right ways gaming laptops in 2025. For previous generations in Alienware's lineup, the Area-51 name was reserved for only their top-of-the-line desktops and laptops, and for 2025 we actually get two notebooks carrying the prestigious addition to their model naming. Available in 16 and 18-inch flavors, both new notebooks can be yours with pretty much the best of the best, currently available when it comes to laptop silicon. And this one right here bets on Intel's 275HX and Nvidia's RTX 5080. That one might not be the fastest GPU you can get right now, but our testing during the past few months made clear for games you do not really gain a lot when opting for the 5090. And given the price difference, the 5080 actually makes a lot more sense here. Add in 32 gigs of speedy RAM, a 2TB SSD and a QHD+ 240Hz IPS display, and you definitely have all the right ingredients for an awesome, somewhat mobile gaming experience. And all of this can be yours for a price I would actually consider reasonable compared to similarly spec'd high-end 16-inch laptops like the RG Strix or Scar 16 or something like the Legion Pro 7. Before we get to our performance results though, let's start with the exterior, since apart from the new silicon inside of this one, Alienware also completely redesigned their laptop lineup this year. As you guys may know by now, I have always been a big fan of their overall design language, and the M18 from last year is still one of my favorite 18 inches to this date. While that one sported a much more industrial design, the new Area-51 looks and also feels a lot more organic. So the much sharper lines have been exchanged for smooth rounded edges that look quite different but also manage to keep the underlying Alienware DNA. In fact, I would say the new laptops definitely do look more alien, and when it comes to this kind of styling, I would say there is nothing quite like it on the market. And since I like the whole Windows laptop world because of the insane amount of choice when it comes to specs and looks, I definitely appreciate what Dell did here. Sure, this one will not be everyone's cup of tea, but it will definitely be a conversation starter, and if you want something truly different, well, the Area-51 might be your best bet. And do not even get me started on that teal color. I just think it looks awesome. Overall chassis quality and rigidity is still excellent, and with the teal-colored metal lower half of the base unit, topped with a sturdy plastic cover that helps keeping your palms from sweating when pushing the powerful 16-incher, with the super smooth hinge, keeping the display in place without any excessive wobble, and the aluminium top display lid, there is definitely nothing to complain about here. The exhausts have also been redesigned, and instead of the honeycomb pattern from before, we now have a much simpler styling for 2025. I prefer last year's style here, but the new RGB glow definitely helps finding the ports you're looking for without blinding you like with the previous models. And before I forget, if you ever feel like you need to turn your laptop upside down, you're greeted with a Gorilla Glass window giving you an RGB illuminated view of your laptop's internals. It looks awesome, but then again you will probably hardly see it, which is a bit of a bummer. And speaking of RGB, there's plenty, and in addition to the already mentioned window and exhausts, you got the obligatory per key options, and the RGB trackpad is also making a comeback. Circling back to the ports, while Alienware's competitors like the aforementioned Legion Pro 7 or the Scar moved all the ports to the sides, the Area-51 goes the other direction and moves everything to the back. The overall selection is quite fitting for a high-end laptop of 2025, and next to the power connector and HDMI 2.1, you get a pair of Thunderbolt 5s and 3 USB-A 3.2 Gen 1s. The missing DisplayPort and network jack are a bit of a bummer, and while it will not matter for most everyday use cases, upgrading the USB-As to the faster Gen 2 standard would have been great to see. You do get a full-size SD card reader with pretty snappy transfers though, and just like that one, the audio combo port is located on the left front as well for some added convenience. Wireless transfer rates are a bit on the slower side compared to some of the competition, and while Dell offers a high-res webcam upgrade option when you configure your own Area-51, our test sample came with the standard 2 megapixel variant, which looked decent without offering a lot to write home about. Below the metal bottom cover, you get easy access to a pair of SODIMMs for memory upgrades and a total of 3 NVMe slots, with one of them being a PCIe Gen 5 for some pretty bonkers storage configs in a 60-inch laptop. When it comes to inputs, this is actually my first time trying their Cherry mechanical keyboard option, and I already felt that the non-Cherry variant was one of the best laptop keyboards of 2024. However, this one is of course on another level in terms of tactility. For both gaming and general typing needs, the overall experience is incredibly satisfying, albeit quite a bit louder compared to standard membrane keyboards. The trackpad cannot quite keep up, and while I do not mind the size, since let's face it, you will use this one with a mouse for most of the time anyways, I would prefer a more subdued click, since the sharp feeling for this one does not feel and sound quite as premium. But hey, it got RGB. One of the biggest gripes you guys seem to have with the previous generation of Alienware laptops was their choice of displays, and if you expect OLED or mini LED panels for 2025, you might still be disappointed. That said, the IPS display Alienware utilizes for this one is pretty damn good when it comes to our measurements, with typical contrast for an IPS, high brightness, generous color gamut coverage, very snappy response times, and of course no PWM flickering. As a creator, I would have wished for better factory calibration, even though we have been able to improve color reproduction tremendously with our manual calibration. And if you lack the required hardware, feel free to download our profile from our website. Some pre-calibrated profiles like sRGB would have also been nice, but I guess that's a pretty niche request coming from a video creator. But hey, we are allowed to be a little selfish from time to time, right? As to whether Alienware or Dell for that matter should offer some more eye-candy display options, well, I would imagine a company of that size could easily source such displays, so I would assume they could easily do it if they wanted to. So either they are fine with just offering one actually pretty good, if not quite the best display, or simply prefer to keep the price lower. But please let me know what you think, and if they would offer an OLED or mini LED option, would you be willing to spend a couple of $100 extra for an upgraded screen experience? Let me know in the comments below. Alright, so let's see if Alienware can also take advantage of the bigger than usual chassis when it comes to performance, and right off the bat, the Intel Core 275HX performs alright, but cannot quite keep up with the competition. I am personally okay with this, especially if it means more power is reserved for the GPU, since I would argue that apart from any Cinebench results, you would be hard-pressed to really feel a difference here. Especially considering that our PCMark system performance results are well in line with the similarly equipped competition has on offer here, which also results in a very streamlined overall experience. And while we did run into some problems with overall system stability and the command center being a bit finicky in the past, I am happy to report that we did not run into any trouble with the Area-51. Sure, the command center is still not the fastest management application out there, but it's well laid out and easy to navigate. And I also found that their automatic mode switching, depending on what you're doing, worked quite well and reliably, so I hardly really had to go into their software. But let's finally talk about what you can get out of the RTX 5080 running at its maximum TGP in the 16-incher and how the Area-51 handles modern games. In our synthetic tests, Firestrike shows the usual differences, and since the CPU has a big impact here, our numbers are a bit all over the place, but nonetheless the Alienware performs quite well and within expectations for its hardware. TimeSpy cleans things up a bit, and once again you get pretty much exactly what you signed up for when it comes to Nvidia's second-in-line Blackwell mobile GPU. In the real world, we get a similar picture, and in our 1080p rating, we are getting some solid results despite the slightly slower numbers from our CPU testing. Of course, the 5080 is a much better fit for QHD, since that is also the native resolution of the Alienware's display. And in such scenarios, the Area-51 is even able to squeeze a few frames more out of the same hardware compared to competing laptops. In general, only the most demanding games will drop below the 60 FPS mark in QHD, and for most games, even 4K on an external screen is not a problem for the chunky gamer. And as always, you do have DLSS and MFG at your disposal, so you can either get into a much smoother territory in games like Black Myth Wukong, which struggle to get above 50 FPS rendered natively, while we got around 60 FPS with DLSS and easily tripled our initial numbers with MFG, even though we did observe some artifacts here and there. For me, I gladly take the much smoother experience than the lower FPS, but your mileage may of course vary here. If you, however, want to take advantage of the high refresh rate, you can also speed up Cyberpunk, for example, from about 40 FPS in QHD and the game's ray tracing ultra setting to about 65ish FPS with DLSS and a whopping 220 with MFG. Again, with some sacrifices when it comes to visuals, even though you would really have to know what you're looking for and a bit of a latency hit. That did not bother me personally once again. I teased it before, but I actually really like how the Alienware handles fan noise, and since the 5080 can run with up to 165 watts in balanced mode already, you can actually get a very decent compromise between noise to performance. And even the actual performance mode is quite reasonable if you ask me. But please hear for yourself, and if you are after additional numbers, be it from our stress testing, additional game benchmarks, more CPU tests, or external and internal temperatures, feel free to check out our written review on the website. And just one more thing to note, for whatever reason, the Area-51 exhausts the hot air from the cooling solution to the sides. So depending on how close your mouse hand is to those exhausts, well, it can get rather sweaty if you really push the Alienware. Traditionally, Alienware does not have the best track record when it comes to battery life, and the Area-51 is unfortunately not really an exception. That is a bit of a bummer, especially considering that the competition performs a lot better across the board, but then again, you will hardly move this one around a lot, so it's definitely a disadvantage, but one I would be able to forgive, since we are talking about basically a 16-inch desktop replacement here. Alright folks, that should already be it for today. If you are not looking into gaming laptops with an OLED or mini LED display, if you do not really care about battery life, but if you rather want something that lives on your desk for most of its life with all the ports, an amazing keyboard, still very adequate screen and some pretty impressive performance results in a package that you can still move around and that looks simply awesome, then the Alienware 16 Area-51 should be very high on your shortlist. As a big bonus, all of its qualities can be yours for a pretty reasonable price point, and while it's again not the most portable notebook, it's a high quality, well-engineered gaming laptop in a very unique chassis. But as always, let me know what you think, sound off below. If you felt entertained and informed, consider leaving a like and sub. Thanks a ton for watching. My name is Alex, you guys have been absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait to see you all in the next one. Take care.